economics, finance, intelligence, law enforcement, and of course people. You can't do anything without people or human capital. If you want to learn about how those work, you're going to go to a very odd place that you wouldn't think about. You can find this right on the internet. It's called the U.S. Army Special Operations Forces Manual 2008. And in the appendix there, you're going to find the best political, financial, internet, movies, information that you would never find anywhere in a test book or have anybody talk to you. Read those, and it's kind of fun to read them, particularly the way the folks who wrote that manual describe when media is out of control, which ours clearly meets the 4 requirements. I encourage people, if you want to understand the country and you want to understand what's going on, spend an hour and a half or so, or a half hour every day, just taking a look at those, and that'll give you a really good sense of history and information and how it's used and how people are manipulated and so on and so forth. So I think people need to slow down a little bit, do a little bit of reading, a little more talking. It sounds corny. I hate to use that word too, but there's got to be programs that start with our young people, teaching them these things, teaching them, students don't learn about foreign policy or defense mainly until they're in graduate school and later in college. I was teaching it, and can be done at the high school level for seniors. General Marshall thought that this could be done, and he mentioned it in his Nobel Prize speech prize in 1953. He said seniors at our high school should know about the horrors of war and how we get there. Well, it can be done if you do it the right way and you're creative and you give the kids the benefit of the doubt. They're 18 years old. The boys or young men and women can carry a gun. They have to register for the draft or selective service. They can handle the information, but we wait until they're more, like you were saying, Phil, they're more dumbed down and part of the system. They've been taught, you do it this way, you do it that way, and they don't learn how to be creative in terms of knowing about how the world works beyond our borders and here in our own country until they're in their 20s. And you can get them earlier. And
John, how do you feel about Oliver Stone and Peter Kuznick's, not only their book, but you remember Stone did that series actually on Showtime, The Untold History of the United States. Are you aware of that? Or
I loved it. I showed some of it.
Go ahead.
No, I showed some of those clips to students that I taught. Sandwich sidelined.
Right. So you like what he did because he was smart enough to take the book and to make it into something where, in other words, how many people I've offered to loan the book to and they they won't take the book to read it, but yet they'll watch the series on Showtime because what you were saying before. You made a really cogent point that this is the generation, the young people, that they're into electronics and viewing, visualization, visualizing. So you like that book. So you like the movie, the series, and the books. So is there hope for us if people like us can try to reach more of the younger people? Is there hope for this country, or are we already down the rabbit hole?
Oh, there's hope. Absolutely. There's a lot of when young people are exposed, and even adults to a certain degree, when they're exposed, when they have the time to listen to the arguments like you make and the things you believe in, or even those that are opposite, whatever. I don't even know what political spectrums mean anymore these days. Everybody's co-opting everybody else's program, but maybe that's the way it should go. When people sit down, Americans sit down and listen and talk and don't get into these screaming debates like you see on TV that people want to emulate. There's a lot of hope for this country. I mean, we've got the Good Systems Manual, which is the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, and we've got the First Amendment, which makes this country totally unique. And but it's going to be up to the young people as they become adults to learn from what we've done wrong. I have a son, and he's 30, he wants to start a family, and he doesn't want to be worrying about different nuclear warheads going to fall on D.C. or some terrorist or lone lone gunman, active shooter is going to show up and start gunning people down because they lost the job or was upset with the law case or something. There's got to be outlets to relieve that kind of pressure. And they're always going to be with us, but, talk
right.
is not cheap anymore.
Well, it's interesting, John, as we're getting to the end of the interview. It's interesting because the organization that I joined, it's not an organization, it was a grassroots organization. It was called the 25% Solution, and it was a grassroots organization to get the federal government to cut the military spending by 25% and send the money back to the states and cities to help with their budgets. And it's very simple. And I was asked to speak. This is about maybe I'd say 5 years ago. I was asked to speak at the local college here to a class. It was actually 3 classes in one. There were 3 professors or instructors that had a class together, and they asked me to come and speak about 25% Solution. And I came and I spoke and I answered questions from the kids. It was great. It was really good. I had one kid that was in the Army. He was now at college now, and he was giving me a hard time. He was still gung-ho over being overseas and, fighting the Arabs and all that stuff. But basically the kids were very open-minded. They didn't know much about what I was saying, and it was good. I enlightened them. Well, take a guess. I tried to go back and do that again, and all 3 instructors never got back to me. In other words, the word came down. The word came down from the administration of the school. Maybe somebody complained, and they didn't want to have somebody come back like that. So what I'm asking you is this. In the political spectrum, with this 2-party, as you and I both know, it's a con job. How can we reach the young people?
Well, that's a good question. Of course, everybody will say, well, you can reach them through the World Wide Web and social media and so on. But I think that's not quite the way to go. I think people like you need to be active in trying to go into high schools, maybe to the administration's office, and say, hey, look, I've got something to say. It's very structured, nothing outrageous. I just want to see if you want to have your students hear about this and so on and so forth. I'm just going to use my own example because that's what I know best. I'm here in D.C., and I taught this course on national security for 3 months, and was fortunate enough to be able to bring in speakers from embassies and interest groups and PETA, People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals. A friend of mine works for them, so he used to come in and talk every year. And then, of course, the top-ranking admirals and so on. My end point here is this. These people who have assistants and wear stars on their shoulders, or people like the National Iranian American Council, which during the nuclear negotiations was fighting hard to get the agreement. This allowed the students to get a real broad viewpoint of what this defense, military, politics, entertainment, so on is. And what I always was impressed by is that these speakers have very, very busy schedules, and they wanted to come by not to recruit, and I never would allow them to, not to recruit, but they really wanted to talk to young people, to tell them, here, this is what I think, and you've got to figure out what you think and not have people tell you what to think, like the media does, like you were saying, the con artists in the media. And I thought that was just a great example. And in fact, at one point, I was able to get the executive director of the Maddox Jolie Pitt Foundation in. Now that Brad and Angelina are in the news or out of the news or whatever. And so they all wanted to come in and just tell the students, hey, here's what's going on in the world from where I see it. Northwest Cambodia, the Chinese, the Russians came over, the new Libyan government came over, and they just thought it was really good and important to talk to young Americans because you never know. One of them or two of them.
That's very interesting. That's very interesting. So, how do you feel about street corner protest? Peaceful.
Oh, it's great.
Street corner protest.
There shouldn't be any problem at all.
Yeah. I mean, we did that after the Iraq invasion and the occupation of Iraq. We did it for 9 years here where I live, and every week for 1 hour, people came out with signs, and I personally think that that's the only hope we have right now on a local level is for more and more street corner protests with signs that explain to the people going by exactly what you stand for, and to make people think. And I think that's the most important thing. I don't know how you feel about this, John, but I would venture to say that I'm just going to speculate as a person who bets on the horses that I would say that 75 to 80% of the American public does not realize that over 50% of their tax money is going towards military spending.
No, they don't think they realize where any of it goes. And I know you hear this in your neighborhood. Speaking of taxes, I hear people all the time after winter ends up here in D.C. Metro, there's potholes everywhere and so on. And I'll say, you want the potholes fixed fast? Pay your local taxes, man. You know, that doesn't come free. Or you want the electrical system that's gone down to get done faster so we don't have to import workers from upstate New York and elsewhere. You got to pay taxes. And Virginia wants to cut taxes. Probably everybody complains about that, but no one, and I think maybe this is, as we end here, what hits on the problem. Nobody wants to pay up. You know, I always say, hey, I don't mind spending all this money on military if I can get my name on a cruise missile, you know, so I can be empowered to own something. I'm just
I think that's why
people.
I think that's why a lot of people don't want to pay taxes because they feel that the tax money is being wasted. See, that's the problem. Yeah. And they're right. I mean, they happen to be right, but for the wrong reasons. To me, it's wasted because of all this military garbage. Okay, so that's why I think it's wasted. But for the average person, they'll say it's wasted for the bureaucracy, you know, and all that stuff. So, but anyway, I want to thank you for taking the time out to come on. Is there any anything you want to mention to the listeners about where they could read you or get you some of your ideas? You can tell us now. A blog or.
Counterpunch is, of course, a fine publication. There's much of my work is on academia.edu. There's a lot of teaching documents, and that document I mentioned about learning about the instruments of national power is out there. It's academia.edu, John Stanton. And, you know, just keep thinking and ask questions. I think that's probably one of the most ridiculous things is not being done now. Look at the debate last night, as we started on that. What questions did that host actually ask? And I will commend this article to your readers for a good synopsis of a debate last night, and it's on the World Socialist website of all places.
World Socialist website? Okay.
And it talks about the degradation of the society based on the appearance of the two candidates. And they write very aggressively, which I always like. Get right to the point. But that's a good piece to read to figure out how sorrowful our political process has become.
Now
I think everybody knows it.
Where is that piece? Where is that piece?
It's on the World Socialist website.
And the piece is called what? Do you know the name of it?
It's just it's the lead piece, left side. It's a review.
The lead piece. Okay. By the way, just for the information of yourself and of the people listening to our fine show. Okay, Lester Holt was the moderator. I have a thing about Lester Holt. I have no use for this guy. I'm going to tell you why. He was with MSNBC. He was at MSNBC in 2002 into 2003, and he was one of the idiots that was the embedded so-called journalist that was cheerleading the invasion and occupation of Iraq. That's the same Lester Holt, and they gave him a job promotion after that. Now he's an anchor. He's a respected anchor. He was a little hack, like that little Katie Couric. You remember her, right? Yeah, she was walking through the hallways of NBC, and I remember on the air, and she was going, "Marines rock!" After we invaded, "Marines rock!" She was going. These are the people that they call journalists. So we'll leave it at that. John, thank you so much for being on our interview show, and I really appreciate taking the time out.
Thanks for having me, and be glad to help out anytime.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Thanks, folks, for listening to this wonderful interview. We'll have another one really soon. And just remember that